At this time, I will now turn this webinar over to Toya from SCORE for us to begin.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Toya Hemingway, and I'm the chapter chair here at SCORE Chicago. SCORE is a national nonprofit association dedicated to helping small businesses get off the ground, to grow, and to achieve their goals through education and mentorship. We have been serving the needs of business owners across the country since 1964. Here at SCORE Chicago, our mentors are experienced entrepreneurs, corporate managers, and executives with backgrounds in a diverse set of industries and specialties who volunteer their experience and knowledge to help small business professionals start, develop, and grow their businesses. We offer free and confidential mentoring on an ongoing basis, as well as low cost or no cost business training and free online workshops. In addition, we also offer numerous templates and tools on our website. If you're interested in being mentored, please go to score.org and submit a mentoring request. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Cyrus Walker. Cyrus is the managing partner of Data Defenders, LLC, a cybersecurity advisory services firm based here in Chicago, Illinois. They provide cybersecurity advisory services, cyber threat management and response services, and managed security services to the public and private sectors. Cyrus is an internationally recognized and published expert on electronic voting security and is experienced and an experienced cybersecurity industry executive with a diverse technology background. Cyrus, thank you very much for presenting today.
Thank you for having me. And I want to thank SCORE and the City of Chicago, BACP, for having me again for this year's installment of Cybersecurity for Small Businesses. This year, we're going to do it a little different. We're going to talk about some of the trends and statistics related to cybersecurity, but we're also going to look at some specific threats that small businesses are experiencing today that are affecting their ability to do business safely and securely. So let's get into it. So we're going to look at where we are today. Cybersecurity and the threat landscape is a constantly evolving concern, and it changes day to day. So we're going to look at where we are today. We're going to talk about some of the top cyber threats for small businesses in 2024. And then we're going to talk about what are the bad guys after, because they're after some specific things today due to the benefit of acquiring those artifacts, if you will. And then we're going to look at some cybersecurity strategies for small businesses that you can implement quickly to raise the security profile of your business. So let me just give some statistics real quick. Did you know by 2025 that the financial losses due to cybercrime will total $10.5 trillion globally, making it the third largest economy in the world behind the United States and China? The problem is that organizations remain vulnerable to cybercrime due to mismanaged or inadequate cybersecurity operations and the increased opportunity for financial gain from attack vectors such as ransomware and wire transfer fraud. So let's look at some of the trends that you should be aware of that are probably wreaking havoc on your business today. Phishing remains one of the most effective ways that attackers can gain access to your digital life and profile because it provides the attacker with the sensitive information they need for financial gain. Ransomware continues to be a significant threat because it relies on the human behavior for its success and almost always leads to a financial payday for the attacker. Cloud tenant configuration issues remain the #1 cause for digital wire transfer fraud. 39% of businesses have experienced cloud tenant data breaches in the past year, and that number is projected to increase to 50% this year. As a result, businesses have reported a loss upwards of $1.4 billion in 2022 and projected to hit $2 billion this year, 2024. The main reason for cloud configuration issues is that small businesses generally don't have access to the right skill set or talent to appropriately implement and manage their cloud tenants. Most businesses are moving to the use of cloud technology because the cost of cloud tenant services tend to be less than purchasing and managing on-premise equipment, and businesses don't have to worry about the constant upgrading of equipment when it becomes obsolete. The small business is under tremendous pressure by the uptick in the threat landscape caused by events such as global conflicts, like what's happening in the Middle East and the Ukraine, which have emboldened malicious actors from around the world to expand attacks against soft targets, such as small businesses. Let's briefly examine some of the trends that highlight the reasons why cybersecurity issues are critical to the survival of small businesses. In 2023, 65% of all reported malware attacks were against small businesses. 54% of those attacks against small businesses resulted in a loss of more than $1.8 million for each occurrence. Why is this? Typically, small businesses lack the necessary technical competencies and resources to counter its active threat landscape. This is generally due to its inability to afford the right level of resources and expertise to build and manage a cybersecurity program in-house. Also, the small business market is competing against a larger, more revenue-rich corporate sector that can afford the required level of resources and expertise and are therefore able to provide more competitive compensation to attract already scarce cybersecurity expertise away from the small business markets. The end result is that generally 63% of businesses that experience a cyber attack close their doors within 6 months of the attack. Why are cybersecurity issues more impactful to small businesses? Typically, the small business operations are not mature enough to warrant building sophisticated cybersecurity programs, but they are continuously subjected to a threat landscape that warrants the need for programs that operationalize cybersecurity to protect the business against its threat landscape. To help small businesses navigate the cybersecurity paradigm, the small business cybersecurity maturity model that we show here provides a roadmap that pairs the business level of growth and maturity with the commensurate cybersecurity functional considerations. As the model conveys, the first foundational and most critical need of cybersecurity for small businesses are the protective countermeasures focused on protecting the business's information and technology. As the business matures in its operations, its cybersecurity program should mature along with it. 85% of all breaches involve some level of human interaction. In 2023, social engineering tactics were a key method for obtaining employee and consumer data and credentials. Over 75% of targeted cyber attacks start with an email. So we're going to look at the top 10 main causes of cybersecurity issues today. I'll do that by offering you a brief story. A dear friend of mine was one click away from losing $100,000 because of a similar email that she received. The cyber thieves had already gotten into her bank account and were trying to transfer $100,000 out of her account. Luckily, she thought enough to call me, and I helped her stop the attack immediately. So when you're faced with a situation like this, I'm going to offer you some steps that are very practical that you can follow that will hopefully prevent you from suffering a financial loss as well. First, when you're presented with a request to make a decision online from someone that you don't know or from a process that you didn't initiate, I recommend you stop, you close your eyes, and you take 3 deep breaths. And you ask yourself the following question: do I know what this is, or can I confirm that this is legitimate? If the answer is no, then do not click on anything. Don't click on any links. Don't open any files. Don't call any phone numbers provided in the email. To confirm if the email is legitimate, go directly to the vendor's website yourself and get the customer support number from their site and call them to confirm whether or not the request that's being made by the company is legitimate. Do not give out any credit card or bank account information over the phone, especially if you're feeling uncomfortable in doing so. It's okay to hang up the phone or stop the transaction if your conscience is telling you that this may not be a good thing to do. Call a tech professional that you know that can help you confirm the legitimacy of the transaction or give you guidance on how to move forward. At the end of the day, there are no foolproof techniques for preventing these kinds of attempts. The bad guys will continue to evolve their techniques as our digital lives evolve as well. The only way to prevent yourself from becoming the next victim is by you staying alert and not letting the immediate sense of fear and confusion overtake you, which will cause you to do something that you may regret. You are really the only foolproof defense against cyber thieves. Third-party exposure has become a big concern today, and it relates to vulnerabilities that our partners that we connect with have in their technology infrastructure. Vendor risk management programs have become a key part of establishing business relationships today because businesses want to ensure that they establish a connection to a partner that is secure. If you are familiar with the Target breach that happened about 7 or 8 years ago, that was a major cybersecurity incident that Target, the retail outlet, experienced. And they experienced that breach was as a result of a vendor that they were doing business with that was hired to maintain their HVA systems on their stores, their brick and mortar stores. This vendor had installed a computer on an HVA system that was connected to the internet so that they could remotely monitor this HVA system. The computer was vulnerable, and it was eventually compromised by attackers who then were able to gain access to Target's network and steal millions of credit cards as a result. A large majority of cybersecurity breaches that occur are usually due to mismanagement of IT infrastructure or misconfiguration of its technology. This relates to how you use your technology on a daily basis, how you've configured it, who installed it, the skill set level related to that, so forth and so on. Configuration mistakes can leave wide open doors and vulnerabilities into your environment that hackers look to take advantage of. Poor cyber hygiene is related to inadequate or poorly or inconsistently managed cybersecurity countermeasures, not following the latest best practices, also not having the latest or necessary policies in place to direct human behavior as it relates to the use of your data and systems. Cloud tenant vulnerabilities is a big one today, again, because as I mentioned earlier, companies are beginning to move to the cloud for its affordability. Malicious actors are looking to take advantage of misconfigurations in cloud tenants, accessing, for instance, your email for the purpose of redirecting sensitive emails or information to gain a deeper advantage or access into your operations. Today, this is the #1 method for executing a wire transfer fraud attack against the business. We'll look at that a little bit later. Mobile device vulnerabilities include misconfigurations of mobile devices, including poor passwords, installing compromised apps, and not having the right protective countermeasures implemented on mobile devices. And we'll look at endpoints later on and talk about some things that you can do to increase the security around your endpoints, including your mobile devices. A forecast by International Data Corporation, IDC, estimated that there's going to be 41.6 billion IoT devices in 2025, capable of generating upwards of 79.4 zettabytes of data. IoT devices are devices that use an IP address to communicate over the internet. Poorly configured IoT devices can allow an attacker to exploit the misconfiguration or vulnerabilities to gain access into the larger technology infrastructure that could be your home, your business, or anywhere these devices exist. Today, most consumers maintain at least 30 IoT devices. And when we talk about IoT devices, we're talking about anything that's smart. smartphone, smart TV, Roku device, gaming device, smartwatch, air conditioners that are smart capable now, refrigerators, microwaves, stoves, dishwashers. Anything that you can connect to your Wi-Fi network is now considered a smart device or an IoT device, and is also a potential entry point into your infrastructure. Ransomware continues to be the #1 threat vector for financial gain, for malicious actors involving the encryption of your data and requiring you to pay money for the decryption key to regain access to your data. As we saw a few weeks ago with the Lurie's Children's Hospital incident, this type of threat can be a very devastating attack against your business and operations. We're going to decode a ransomware attack in a little bit so that you understand how this attack works, and we're going to also talk about some strategies for protecting you against ransomware attacks. Poor data management includes the lack of securely storing, encrypting, or establishing the right privileges around accessing your data. Incident response is an extremely important part of cybersecurity operations. All businesses should have an incident response plan, but most businesses don't, because it often gets neglected. When a business is hit with a cyber attack, if they don't have the proper incident response procedures in place, it can mean a significant financial loss to the business, or, as I mentioned before, the business shutting its doors. So what are the bad guys after? They're after access into your digital profile and your digital life. We all have a digital life, whether you believe it or not, or accept it or not, whether you've chosen not to participate in social media or not, you still have a digital life. If you have a smartphone, if you have anything smart, if you've accessed your accounts, if you have online accounts, for instance, you have a digital life. You have a digital profile, and attackers are after that. Why? Because there's an opportunity for great financial gain from having access in that way. How do they do this? Well, today, by using AI and other methods to develop a digital profile from all the information that you put online that tells them all they need to know about who you are. You are no longer a little fish in a big pond. You are a fish in a massive ocean that they now have access to via the internet, and with the use of AI now, allowing attackers to create more robust attack methods against you, and specifically against you, because you are a source of financial gain. So what kind of digital profiles are the bad guys looking to create on you? They're looking to profile your social media habits and patterns, such as places that you check into, the types of topics that you post about, whether it's of a political or social or entertainment nature. They're looking to understand your shopping patterns with the objective of creating more specific phishing emails directed specifically at you, hoping that you'll fall for the phishing attempt and give them your financial information like credit card numbers. They're looking to understand your communication patterns, such as what communications tools you use like Gmail or Hotmail or other free email clients that they can access in order to conduct spoofing or other malicious activities for the purpose of acquiring detailed information about what you're communicating about. Their overall objective is to create a more specific phishing activity against you, the user, because the more they can social engineer you, the better chance they have of creating more specific attacks against you that will lead them to the financial gain they're looking for. This illustration that we show here is an illustration that we created about a year ago when AI first came online to prove how AI could be used to create specific profiles of users and allowing us to guess the passwords of basic accounts like Ring accounts, Bank of America accounts, your retail accounts, your Grubhub, your Uber accounts, so forth and so on. Because I would imagine most of us on this call have accounts with one of those institutions that I just named: your Amazon accounts, your Hulu accounts, your Netflix accounts, so forth and so on. So what we did is we created a theory that an attacker could use AI to go out and publicly do a screen scrape or an information scrape of a targeted user, and then create what we call rainbow tables or password tables based on that information that we collected, and then use those rainbow tables against popular online providers. And we were successful 9 times out of 10 and being able to guess the passwords of a test target that we executed this against. Also, if you are using social media like TikTok or other applications, and you are using it with some level of caution, let me tell you that if for instance, if you think you're hiding your location, it is possible for a malicious attacker to determined enough to figure out information on you. There was a video that was released about a week ago that showed 2 individuals. They didn't know each other, but somehow they had come in contact with each other. One individual offered the premise that he could guess where this other individual was by one piece of information. So the targeted individual just basically said, "I'm in a hotel." And within 2 hours, the attacker or modeling attacker discovered what hotel they were in, what city they were in, and even what room they were in. They happened to be in a hotel in London at the time that they were having this interaction. And that's because this user had put up information online and made it public that he was able to discover through about 2 hours of research her exact location. So if you think you're safe, guess again. So let's look at the anatomy of a ransomware attack. Here we show the base foundation of a ransomware attack is where a malicious attacker will send out an email, or spam email, or phishing email over the internet to thousands and thousands of users. Today, ransomware attacks can be targeted, but in their initial inception, they were basically phishing attempts. They were throwing out spamming emails to hundreds of thousands of users, hoping that they would get a few bites, and they always would. The user receives the spam email and clicks on links or files in the email because they think that they're legitimate. These links or files of a malicious nature or malware call out to command and control servers to begin the process of encrypting the drive of the user's system. Malware looks for data storage backup drives that the user's system has attached to it to encrypt those as well, and we'll talk about why that is. Once the encryption is complete, the command and control server sends a note to the user informing them of the attack and requesting payment, usually via Bitcoin. The Bitcoin payment is made on the dark web because attackers can hide their presence on the dark web much more readily than they could on the regular internet that we all use every day. The payment is received by the malicious attacker, and the decryption key is sent to the user with instructions on how to decrypt their data. Now, this doesn't happen all the time, particularly if the attacker knows who you are. For instance, with Kaiser Permanente or Lurie's Children's Hospital, we still don't know how much that ransomware request was, but I can rest assured that if the attacker knew who they were, that ransomware request would have been in the millions of dollars. For instance, Kaiser Permanente, another hospital system in California, was hit with a ransomware attack. Their payment request was $17 million, and they paid it because they had no choice. Their entire operations were brought to a halt, and they needed to restore operations. So ransomware attacks can have a devastating effect on the business if you're not prepared for it. And we're going to look at, again, some strategies on how to protect yourself against ransomware attacks. Today, on average, you maintain at least 30 to 40 online accounts across various sectors, including travel, financial, entertainment, retail, etc., that you've created over time since the first time you started using the internet. Some accounts you may have even forgotten about. Generally, the way you've created those accounts is by using the same email and password repeatedly across these accounts, which is typical human behavior. You want to be able to remember your user ID and password without having to go through a Herculean effort to get access to your accounts. So what do? You generally use what you already know, which is an email address or user ID and password that you've used multiple times that you have committed to memory. However, this kind of behavior makes it very easy for malicious attackers to gain access into your entire digital life. And so we're going to talk about some practical things that you can do to change this behavior, making it easier for you to remember your usernames, emails, and passwords, while making it harder for an attacker to gain access into your digital life. Account compartmentalization is the strategy that I'm going to talk about. It's meant to create what we call credential boundaries that make it easier for you to remember and manage your online account credentials and harder for the attacker to gain access into your entire digital life. It starts by organizing your various online accounts into different categories and creating a unique set of credentials for each of those categories. The idea is that if an attacker gets into one category of online accounts using these credentials that they may have stolen from you, they can't use those same credentials to access your other online or account categories. You'll essentially create buckets or account categories of all your online accounts. And think about all your accounts that you maintain and list them out by category. For example, one account category might be financial, which includes your credit card accounts, bank accounts, retirement accounts. Start by grouping all of those accounts into a functional category like finance. Do the same for your travel and retail, entertainment, health, and social media accounts. For each functional category, create a unique email address or username and password that you do not use on a daily basis, and assign this unique pair to each online account in that category, requiring an email address for the username, for instance. Google, Yahoo, and Microsoft all allow you to create multiple email accounts free of charge. For example, you can create a new email and password for your finance category to be used to log into all of your accounts that fall under finance. You'll create a different email and password for your travel category to be used for all accounts that fall under the travel category, and so on and so on. So for here, for instance, I show here in the diagram, if you have a general email like johndoe@gmail.com, and you've created a grouping of accounts, you can assign a letter to each of those categories: F for financial, T for travel, R for retail, E for entertainment, and G for Giga, which is Uber, Uber Eats, Grubhub, Lyft. All those service-based accounts that you have in your under your control. Now, one thing I will strongly recommend is not to use the suggestions or the nomenclature that I'm spelling out here. Create your own that's only relative to you, that you will know and no one else will. So if you have a sample email address of johndoe@gmail.com, your email address for your financial category would be johndoef@gmail.com. The sample password for that category would be password F123#. That makes it easier for you to remember your usernames or email addresses and passwords for all of your accounts in that category. For an added layer of security, you can make slight variations to both the email address and password for every online account within the given category. So if you have 5 accounts in your financial category, you can make slight variations to each one of those email addresses that will allow you to remember it, so you don't have to write it down. You don't have to use a password vault, because those can be hacked as well, as LastPass experienced last year. But do this, and again, do this in a way that you can remember and don't, again, have to write them down. One strong suggestion, do not use any of these emails for any kind of email communication, because the whole purpose of this is to keep this secret to you. If, for instance, you decide you want to use one of these email addresses and your password to communicate online, and you happen to do that on a device that is compromised, that where the attacker that's compromised that device can steal those credentials, then those credentials are now compromised and they can potentially get access into all of your accounts in that category. So this is why I'm recommending that you do not use this email strategy, the emails that you create as a part of this strategy, to communicate publicly out on the internet. Many online accounts require multi-factor authentication, which enables the provider to send an email or text message to confirm your identity. Always choose the text message SMS option, because this divides your authentication process across two different technology components. If you create a new email address according to these tips, please remember, again, do not use these email addresses for any other purposes other than account access. And never, ever give out the PIN that you received during the multi-factor authentication process over the phone to anyone for any reason. No legitimate retailer will ever ask you for that PIN. Why? Because they generated it already. If you're being asked for that PIN, that means that you're probably dealing with a malicious individual on the other end. End the transaction and take those deep breaths, as I suggested earlier, and figure out what your next step is going to be. It's okay to stop. It's okay to cut off the transaction. You know, the internet police are not going to come get you if you do that. These are safety measures that you can use to better protect you. One last point, let me go back. I said never authenticate to email. You never ever want to authenticate to email, because if your email account is compromised, then the attacker will receive that authentication notification and can then change your password and take over your accounts, and you lose access. So I had a friend of mine who had his authentication done to his email account. Some attacker was attempting to port his phone number out. They were able to successfully do that because they also had control over his email address, and he lost a phone number that he had for over 30 years. He had to go and get a new phone service because of it, because the phone company would not intervene as their authentication process had been appropriately followed. Endpoint devices. Endpoint device security is extremely important to protecting your data and your business. Endpoint devices are a key way that a malicious attacker will use to infiltrate your business, generally by uploading malicious code to your system that allows them to gain unfettered access into your system and eventually all the computers on your network. To protect against this, you need to first make sure that you have the most up-to-date operating system and applications running on your endpoints. This means installing the latest updates and patches for both your operating systems and applications that are made available by your vendor. If you're still using Windows 98, Windows 7, or even Windows 10, you may want to seriously consider upgrading your operating system to the latest Windows operating system. You should also make sure that all users in your business have what we call least privilege access, which means that they have the lowest amount of access to your system and data that they absolutely need to do their jobs on a daily basis. If you don't understand this, you should really seek the assistance of a professional, of an IT professional that can help you understand and configure this in your environment, because this will save you in the long run. We had a situation with a CFO about 2 months ago whose computer was hacked into. They executed a wire transfer fraud against him, and he wound up transferring $65,000 to the malicious attacker when he thought he was transferring that money to a legitimate vendor. How did that happen? He had way too much privileged access. He had administrator access. into their cloud tenant, which he absolutely didn't need. And because his computer was compromised, whenever he logged into that tenant, he exposed those credentials to the malicious actors, and they were able to get into his tenant, read his emails, and redirect emails to them that he thought were going to the legitimate vendor, and as a result wound up losing $65,000 as a result. Lastly, you want to make sure that you have proper malware protection installed on your endpoints. And I've listed a number of solutions here that you can look at. Some are free online, some do cost, that can help you increase the security levels on your endpoints. So, some strategies for guarding against ransomware. Data backup is the first and primary strategy for guarding against ransomware. It won't stop ransomware, but what it will do is it'll allow you to recover from a ransomware attack without having to pay the ransom to get your data back. It's extremely important process to securing information and is mainly related to the business capability of recovering its information as a result of a security-related incident that's made your primary data source unavailable. Data backup is the most important to protecting against ransomware and data exfiltration or data loss. Again, the main reason why ransomware attacks are successful is because it's not just because a user clicked on a link that initiated the malicious data encryption process, but they're successful because the business that was the victim of the ransomware attack does not have adequate data backups to allow it to restore, or the data backups were directly connected to the computer, and the malicious attacker programmed the ransomware attack to look for those external data sources as well to encrypt those. When this happens, this puts the business in the position of having to pay the ransom in order to get their main, in most cases, only data source unlocked so that they can resume business. The most effective data backup scenario includes either some combination of online-based data backup solution or an air-gapped solution that prevents the malicious attacker from not only encrypting data on the system that's under attack, but also encrypting the data backup source that was created by the business. Again, ransomware attacks are sophisticated enough to seek out those external data sources, so you want to make sure that you've maintained your data backup on a daily basis. Two, that the data backup is physically disconnected from your infrastructure to prevent it from being a victim of the ransomware attack as well. Security Event Information Management, better known as SIEM, takes a more cohesive approach to monitoring activities across the entire infrastructure, including your network devices, server devices, wireless devices, and workstation endpoints. SIEM technology allows you to pull log information from these different types of devices to conduct aggregation and correlation of events in the total subset of all your devices to identify any potential threats against your business. SIEM technology uses signature databases to identify threats captured in the correlated logs, which require that the signature database be kept up to date in order to successfully identify current and new threats. SIEM solutions are somewhat reactive in nature and also work by comparing current data streams against a baseline of traffic taken from your infrastructure. So this is a little bit more advanced way of guarding against ransomware, because what it's going to do is tell you who's in your environment, what they're doing, and give you the opportunity to mitigate that threat against your business. Managed detection and response is a more advanced flavor of SIEM technology and can be used to provide analytic behavioral analysis that can also detect unknown threats. So it's looking at behavior in your environment to determine what activity is happening that maybe shouldn't be happening in your environment. Some common types of SIEM software or managed detection and response solutions out there: Data Show Analytics, or Microsoft Sentinel are two solutions that do offer this kind of protection for your business. Cybersecurity awareness and training. We have a saying in the cybersecurity industry that the human element is the weakest link in any security operations. Why is that? Because you cannot absolutely control what a human being does when it comes to managing your systems and data. You can only be as influential as you can to minimize the risk associated with the human element. I have a saying that you can spend $1 billion on a cybersecurity system, and all it takes is one user to give away the password, rendering that system completely useless. If you remember the cybersecurity incident that occurred in Las Vegas last year, that incident occurred because a support tech engineer working for a company that provided technical support to all the hotels and casinos on the Strip literally gave away the password to a critical system that allowed a hacker that was social engineering this tech support engineer to infiltrate the system and shut the system down using a ransomware attack. This attacker knew who they were attacking, and you can imagine what that ransomware request was. This is a prime example, again, of how a malicious attacker can use social engineering to pose as a supervisor or someone familiar to the organization, causing the unsuspecting tech support engineer to give away sensitive information over the phone, where best practices demand that no sensitive information like passwords ever be given over the phone. But because the malicious actor was convincing, posing as a supervisor, he was able to gain the information that he needed to access systems and encrypt their data, bringing operations for that entire strip to a halt. One way to minimize the risk of the human element being the cause of cybersecurity incidents is through cybersecurity awareness training, which has to be conducted on a consistent basis to ensure that the user can maintain a heightened level of awareness and vigilance against cyber threats against the business. Security awareness and training consists of conducting regular training sessions, which today are mostly conducted online, making it easier for an individual to partake of a training session during the course of their regular business day, and easier for the organization to deliver that training in a cost-effective and manageable way. One industry best practice that organizations use today to deliver cybersecurity awareness training is a solution called Know Before, which is an extremely cost-effective solution for delivering robust and up-to-date online training within a business. I've included the Know Before link here if you would like to know more about that solution. Cybersecurity, or any organization contemplating cybersecurity, must contemplate what we call the life cycle approach. The life cycle of cybersecurity starts with its planning, the programmatic aspect, regardless of whether it's focused solely on a protective countermeasure or inclusive of other cybersecurity maturity phases, as I outlined in our pyramid. Cybersecurity governance phase should include some high-level or detailed form of risk management, governance and policy development, which serves to guide the organization or business and how they should be prioritizing and directing its resources to build the cybersecurity program. The level of planning is determined by the business's operational maturity level, as I showed earlier in slides 7 and 8. Once some form of planning is complete, the next phase is to consider what cybersecurity process and procedures are required to support the implementation of the plan. Cybersecurity operations considerations will include things like managed detection and response for networks and endpoints, disaster recovery, incident response management, and regular cybersecurity assessment of its infrastructure. The lifecycle approach is completed when the supporting infrastructure is defined and implemented. Cybersecurity technical infrastructure management includes some form of a risk register, which allows you to identify all the cyber threats and risks that exist against your environment, and manage the remediation and mitigation of those risks on a regular basis. Privileged access management, network architecture and security device management, as well as vulnerability management and data backup are also components of the technical infrastructure management component. While all this might sound very complex, it really isn't. Your level of engagement in these activities should always be based on what stage of maturity your business is at. This lifecycle model and maturity pyramid is designed to simplify your considerations for cybersecurity and guide your efforts in addressing your basic needs and concerns. Small businesses should consider a scalable a la carte approach to building cybersecurity programs, starting with the consideration for what is most critical to the business and scaling the program from that point. So here we show you level 1, 2, and 3, and I'll go through each one of those pretty quickly here. Most small businesses lack the proper technical infrastructure or protective countermeasures necessary to mitigate attacks against its information and infrastructure, which is why there has been such an uptick in activities. Small businesses should seek to implement technical countermeasures first, including basic levels of protection such as malware mitigation, threat detection and response, data backup and recovery, and incident response. This is what we call a level 1 integration strategy. A level 2 integration strategy, which will include a combination of what we talked about at level 1 with an operational approach that considers how the business will respond to cybersecurity-related events that disrupt normal business operations. Response planning can include some form of business continuity and disaster recovery planning, as well as some advanced form of incident response planning, or point solutions management, such as identity management. A level 3 integration strategy includes a combination of level 1 and 2, while including a consideration for developing management strategies that ensure that the cybersecurity infrastructure and operations are aligned with the business's operations and maturity level. At this level, the business is engaging in risk management and governance policy framework development that supports the programmatic approach of managing cybersecurity. The reason why cybersecurity incidents occur, especially in businesses that have some type of countermeasures in place or policies in place, is that the overall cybersecurity operations is lacking in multiple areas. Whether operations are lacking in the constant management and upkeep of technical countermeasures in place, constant discovery and remediation of vulnerabilities, detection and response to active and successful threats, active coordination across multiple lifecycle components, or timely communication to and from key stakeholders, result in a deficiency in any one of these areas that can be exploited by a malicious actor. Cybersecurity operations must be an active and constant process, regardless of the sophistication level of your business operations or cybersecurity program. If operations are not maintained, any effort you make will fail and result in a breach, as we can continuously hear about from organizations that fail to manage their operations. In our business, we say it's not a matter of if a cyber incident is going to happen, it's simply a matter of when and what are you ready to do about it. So what will you do when a cybersecurity breach occurs? Incident response planning helps to answer that question. Monitoring and incident response planning go hand in hand. As with monitoring, incident response planning is often neglected. Most of the attention goes into implementing and managing the small business cybersecurity profile, which is focused on the technology aspect, but often neglects some most important processes that help prevent a security breach or minimize the impact to the company in the first place. Incident response planning can help to minimize the negative impact of a security breach and can help the small business restore operations quickly. Incident response planning focuses on identifying the particular incidents that could have the most negative impact on its operations and then defining plans for responding to those incidents. Having these prescripted test plans in place or tested plans in place can mean the very survival of your business after an incident has occurred. Creating these incident plans means and requires understanding and defining what we call the small business's critical path, which is the business operations or functions along with the technology that supports that's absolutely necessary for the business to continue operations on a daily basis. Once the critical path has been defined, then the technology that supports the critical path can be identified and a general threat assessment can be conducted for the technology that supports the business's critical path. The word threat assessment might seem to be a little overwhelming, but this simply means asking the question, which threats or events could cause my system, applications, and information to suddenly become available to the business? When those potential threats or events are identified, then the IRP should start with developing strategies for responding to those threats should they occur. So you want to ask yourself when you are in an incident response planning mode, the following questions. First, determining who should be involved in the incident response process. Who should we communicate with and what should we communicate about? Third parties, such as law enforcement, may need to be involved in the incident response process, depending on the type of organization, data, or the potential amount of financial loss that you might incur. What data or evidence should we collect about the incident, and how should we store that data? What do we need to do, to restore affected systems and business operations? Conducting a vulnerability remediation that could lead to the incident. If you can identify those vulnerabilities and remediate them, you reduce the probability of that incident occurring. And then, and just as important, having as a part of your incident response process, the post-incident review or lessons learned, which will allow you to improve your incident response process and overall security profile and business operations. When these basic parts of the IRP are completed, the small business is well positioned to handle a cybersecurity incident, and this should be done on at least an annual basis because your business is growing and maturing, your technology is changing, your critical path is evolving with the business. You want to make sure that your incident response plan stays in alignment with your critical path and the business maturity. Let's discuss some additional thoughts and ideas that can help the small business raise its security profile and mitigate the risk landscape against the business. First, cybersecurity should be considered at the beginning of any technology implementation project instead of at the end. The reason for this is that the technical countermeasures and related processes and procedures can be initially implemented in a much more cost-effective way. If implemented after the fact, then the process of adopting these technical countermeasures can be much more time-consuming and disruptive to the business's operations. Also, when technical countermeasures are implemented after the fact, the technology infrastructure requiring these countermeasures is vulnerable in its operations until those technical countermeasures can be successfully implemented. Conducting regular vulnerability scans will allow the organization to manage technical vulnerabilities and mitigate technical vulnerabilities in their infrastructure by discovering and remediating those vulnerabilities on a regular basis. Conducting security assessments, which will include tasks like policy reviews, technical countermeasure reviews, network assessments will allow the organization to create and maintain alignment between its business operations, technology infrastructure, and its cybersecurity plan. Lastly, to leave you with some final thoughts, the framework that I've shared here with you today will help you to determine what technical controls and management processes you should consider implementing in order to adequately protect your business and its information. But this is not a one-time consideration. Cybersecurity is a constant, active, and ongoing consideration, just as important as your product development, your service delivery, your staff management, your financial management, so forth and so on. The process of managing cybersecurity must be integrated directly into the business's operations, just as other processes I've mentioned, in order to ensure that your business can keep up with the ever-changing threat landscape and technology needs. If you're not giving cybersecurity the attention it needs, then you're doing your business a grave disservice. Cybersecurity is really not complex. It is all about taking common sense measures to ensure that your business, that your most valuable product, your information, is protected at all times. With that, that concludes this presentation, and we can go into the Q&A session now.
Okay. Okay, Cyrus, I see several questions in the chat box.
Okay.
Ready? Okay.
Oh yeah, if you want to go ahead and read it, I'll just go ahead and answer.
Okay. Let's see. The username and password strategy they understand, but they're confused about how to move forward what about when you need to communicate with these entities? And they're confused about how to move forward and when they shouldn't use them.
Well, as a general rule of thumb, you shouldn't use them to communicate, but when you set up an account using an email that you created as a result of this strategy, they're going to send you notification or authentication emails. It's okay to use it for those processes, but what I meant was typically we generally use our email accounts on a daily basis to send and receive emails and other things. And for instance, when we're out on the move, if we're traveling, we might use a device or log onto a network that's compromised. And so as a result, you're exposing those credentials to the individual that's compromised those devices you're using. So ultimately, you want to reduce or minimize the use of these credentials out in the public because you don't want to expose them to malicious actors. And if you don't have to use them at all, then again, as my initial recommendation suggested, don't use them.
Okay. Do you like Apple keychain generated passwords?
So yeah, those can be effective, but again, if you lose that, now it's out in the wild, and that can be used against you. So, you know, there's another thing that you have to physically protect. I mean, how many times have you lost keys or anything else that that was important to you? So this strategy that I'm recommending alleviates you from having to rely on any physical piece or software to implement this strategy, but that can be an effective way as long as you don't lose it.
Yeah, yeah. How is there a specific way to protect info in the cloud?
Yeah, so we talked about cloud tenant issues. What you have to do is just make sure that your tenant is configured appropriately, that it's got all the right security countermeasures enabled, that you've implemented least privilege access, and that you're monitoring that on a regular basis, that your administrator credentials are held by people who absolutely need to have those administrative credentials. Most wire transfer fraud attacks that we respond to all happen because the senior level people who were responsible for executing those transactions had admin access to their cloud tenants when they did not need it in the first place. So making sure that you're implementing least privilege access, even for your senior level managers, if your business is at that level of maturity, making sure that your cloud cloud tenant is configured appropriately and that you've got all the security countermeasures enabled should give you pretty strong security for protecting data in the cloud.
Okay. Can you remove files from the cloud is the next question.
Well, you know, the saying goes, once it's out on the internet, it's out there forever. Yes, you can remove your files, but you may not be able to remove them from backup storage facilities that the company uses to back up the data that's being stored on their systems. So my recommendation is that if you don't want any data out there, don't put it out there. Use a flash drive of some sort that you can connect and disconnect and store in a secure location. But once it's out there, it's out there.
Okay. Can you compromise your business when you have guests on your Wi-Fi?
Absolutely. Yes, you can. And that's also a place where malicious attackers will look to attack you. They do what's called, well, we used to do back in the day, and it's actually still done today, called war driving, where we drive around neighborhoods with a Wi-Fi antenna, picking up Wi-Fi networks that are, in a lot of cases, unprotected with a password. Usually that's the guest network that allows us access into the infrastructure. When we're conducting penetration testing, for instance, that's one of the things that we'll do in an attempt to gain access into the business's infrastructure. So what I would recommend is that you have your guest network set up with a password, that you have those networks firewalled against each other. So there is no way that a user on a guest network can get access into your business's network. But malicious attacks happen all the time from the guest network over into the business's network.
Okay, sorry, I'm trying to toggle through the chat. Can one integrate two-phase authentication in small business finance operations digital frameworks?
Yeah, so two-factor authentication is innate in most technologies these days. You can integrate the, for instance, if you're in a Windows environment, two-factor authentication is native in Windows now. To implement it, you would need to consult with a IT professional that understands how to do that. But most of online accounts today are now moving to the use of two-factor authentication because it does provide a higher level of protection. If your operating system environment doesn't provide that, I would imagine that both the Mac or the Apple and the Windows operating system provides two-factor authentication. If it doesn't, you want to look at some third-party application that can implement that for you.
Okay. Back to the backing up information. The question is, so backing up my information on Google is not a good thing?
So you're referring to like My Drive, Google Drive, OneDrive. It is a good thing as long as it's secure, as long as you're using the appropriate credentials to back it up. If you, again, most ways that people access their My Drive or their OneDrive is through their Google email, their johndoe@gmail.com that they use on a regular basis. I would recommend that if you're going to use Google or OneDrive or some other account or some other online cloud backup or cloud data storage as your backup, that you use a separate email account to connect to that you don't use on a regular basis.
Next question. What do you think about the bill to allow driver's licenses on our phones?
I don't have any thoughts pro or con to that. I mean, we essentially live our lives on our phones in a very digital way. I mean, we have everything on our phones. We can order food, we can schedule travel, we can send emails, we can schedule doctor's appointments, we can even get our medical information on our phones now. So I don't really have any issue with that. The only thing I would strongly recommend is that your access to your phone be as strong as possible. So if you're using, an Apple device, that you have the strongest key or key pin available. And same thing for an Android device, that you have either a strong password or key pin, a maximum key pin that would prevent a user or any malicious actor from gaining access to that device.
Okay. Um, Linda asks, is cyber insurance worth the cost?
Absolutely. Cybersecurity is not that expensive, particularly for a small business. I would highly recommend you get cyber insurance if your carrier offers it. Um, they can provide things like incident response support, like computer forensics professionals that can help you come in and potentially recover from the incident, to conduct an investigation on the incident. They might even have some financial loss coverage as well. So I would highly recommend looking into cyber insurance.
Okay. Question about passwords. Usernames are available to everyone, but passwords are for one person to use for safety. Can you confirm?
Well, usernames should be unique to a person as well. If you set up an online account and you use username John Doe 123, and somebody's already used that username John Doe 123, they won't allow you to use that on that platform. Now you could potentially go to another account and use John Doe 123, but actually, usernames are the most unique thing from a service provider. The password can be the same. You know, if you have 50 users and they're John Doe 123, 1234, 1235, they can all potentially have the same password, which would be unfortunate because that means that all those accounts are accessible by everybody on that platform. But your username and password should be unique to you and kept only to you, never written down, and never shared. There's no reason for you to give out your password to anyone that's requesting it. You want to get out of the habit of doing that. Because let me ask you this question. If somebody walked up to you, a stranger walked up to you on the street and asked you for your username and password, would you give it to them? 9 or 10 times out of 10, the answer would be no, you wouldn't. So you need to use that same vigilance in protecting your account credentials if somebody that you're interacting with online is asking you for that. But usernames and passwords should be uniquely created for you and by you.
Okay. Is it good to use your fingerprint?
Yeah, that's one biometric way. That's a part of multi-factor authentication that you can use to secure your environment. Your fingerprint is unique to you. You carry it with you all the time. You'll never lose it unless your finger gets, removed from you for some unfortunate reason. So fingerprints are a good way to secure your account access.
One person uses Mac products, firewalls, and they're asking if those firewall security sufficient enough, or do they need to purchase more security insurance?
If they mean by cyber insurance, again, you should always have cyber insurance, regardless of your level of cybersecurity sophistication. But if you're talking about purchasing additional countermeasures, you absolutely should get additional countermeasures. The firewall only protects, the network. It doesn't protect the endpoint specifically. So you want to have endpoint protection, like some of the endpoint protection vendors that I suggested earlier. You also want to ensure that your data is encrypted when it's stored on your systems. Because if a user or a malicious attacker does get access to your data, if they can't use it, then it's no good to them. So you should have multiple layers, or what we call perimeters of defense, around your environment that will allow you to provide protection to your environment, the most complete and comprehensive protection to your environment.
Okay. We're going to jump over to the Q&A box now. And the first question is, currently we have reboot on our small business computer. Should we layer another defense such as a VPN?
So VPNs, they provide some level of protection, but they don't protect the endpoint. A VPN only protects the pipe, or actually, let me restate that. It only protects the data that's being transmitted from one computer to another. But once that data reaches that computer, or is residing on the computer that you're transferring it from, those endpoints are not protected. So if the malicious attacker has gained access to either one of those endpoints, they have access to your data. The endpoint of the VPN only protects you from protects that data from being intercepted in its transmission across the internet. VPNs are also good for hiding your locations. You know, I have a relative who is extremely concerned about people knowing her whereabouts online, and so she uses a VPN to hide her to hide her tracks, because a VPN will give you an IP address from a location different than the one that you're actually connected to. So they can provide some level of protection, but they're not foolproof or complete in any way.
Do you have any hardware or location-based recommendations that you can recommend, i.e. Wi-Fi capabilities in certain geographical areas?
I'm not really understanding that question, but I'll answer it this way. You should minimize your use of public Wi-Fi, like at coffee shops or airports, because of those Wi-Fi connections are generally insecure, and anyone in that environment can potentially steal your data as you're transmitting it across that Wi-Fi network. But if you're talking about like Wi-Fi technologies that you want to implement in your home, you know, there are many vendors on the market like Netgear or Ubiquiti that I would highly recommend, that can provide very functional, very configurable solutions, but also have a high level of security along with it as well.
Okay. Let's see. Can you share some price-efficient service providers?
I can provide a list of service providers. Of course, we're going to be at the top of that list. But yeah, I can provide a list of service providers to BACP and to SCORE, and you can reach out to them for that list.
Fantastic. Next question. You mentioned setting passwords easy to remember, but that may be hard at times. Any suggestions for virtual password vaults or safe places to house all of the many passwords?
So let me counter that idea that creating easy passwords are hard at times. It is absolutely not hard at all to do that. And I do not recommend you relying on password vaults, as they can be compromised, as we experienced last year. The password strategy that I suggested does allow you to create memorable, strong passwords that you don't have to make a Herculean effort to remember. And you can vary the password. You can base your passwords off of a core password that you vary from category to category. They are not hard. That is not a hard way to go about it. It's a very easy way to go about it. Everyone that I've recommended this to, you know, all praise me as a cyber god, because I've solved that problem of helping them to remember passwords where they don't have to write it down or rely on a password vault to do that. Because again, it's another technology that can be hacked into and is not foolproof. So I don't necessarily recommend them. I recommend the strongest password vault, which is your mind.
Okay. You may have answered this one already, but the question is, what are your thoughts on system-generated passwords? Do you perceive any risk with those?
System-generated passwords can be okay, but again, system-generated passwords are just that. They can be very complex to remember. And if you have system-generated passwords for every one of your accounts, I mean, if you can remember all those passwords, more power to you. I don't recommend you relying on system-generated passwords, because what it's going to do, it's going to cause you to engage in behavior that I'm recommending against, like writing those passwords down. You know, again, we have over 30 to 40 online accounts in our own autonomous domain, and we have to have a password for each one of those. If you're relying on system-generated passwords, they're going to be different from account to account that you're going to have to remember. And the way you're going to wind up doing that is either writing it down or using this, or not using the same, but or using a password vault to store those passwords. So if you follow the suggestion that I gave earlier, it alleviates relying on system generated passwords or using a password vault.
Okay. The last question. How do I get my information off of the dark web?
There's services out there that you can use to do that. Norton LifeLock is a service that you can use to go out to the dark web and remove your information. There's one other service that doesn't come to mind at the moment, but they're known for removing, going out to the dark web, tracking your information down and removing it. I'll dig it up and I'll add it to the information of the service providers that you can look at. But yeah, there are service providers out there that specialize in doing that.
Oh, someone suggests, I think they said Erase Me. Is that one?
Oh yeah, Erase Me is one. Yep.
Okay. Well, that's the final comment, and I think we've gotten all of the questions. So, a lot of information and digestible, I thought. So thank you so much once again, Cyrus. And I want to, on behalf of SCORE, say thank you very much for partnering with us to present these webinars. I think it's very valuable information to small business owners who, like you said, are often the victim of these hackers. Did you have any final comments for the audience?
As I said before, again, you are the only foolproof way of protecting yourself. Be vigilant. Don't be afraid to step back when you're faced with a decision that you have to make on the related to executing a transaction on the internet. Take a step back, take a deep breath, and think. Come back to your senses, get away from that fear, because that's really what causes us to make bad decisions that we regret down the line. And just stay vigilant. And with that, that's all I have.
All right. Thank you once again. Thank you, BACP.
Hey,
Giving
Toya,
them-
this is Stella. Did you hear all that? See,
No.
yeah, but real quickly, 'cause there is some other things going on in here. So I just want to tell you guys thank you for today's presentation to Toya and Cyrus. If you are a part of the BACP Entrepreneur Certificate Program, you will receive credit for today's webinar. This webinar was recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Chicago BACP. And thank you again, Toya, for your help today. And Cyrus, thank you so much. And you guys have a great weekend.
All
You
right.
too. Thank
Thanks.
you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.